Manchester at the scene of an accident involving at least 2 lorries and a van. In Cheshire on the M56, the inside lane is closed eastbound from junction 7 to 6, the Bowden Hell stretch. A car's broken down in the inside lane. And in Berkshire on the M4, the 2 inside lanes shut eastbound, so London bound, junction 5 to 4B towards the M25 following an accident. South London, the A237 at Wallington closed on the Manor Road. The storm damaged a building yesterday morning. The whole area is taped off. And then many roads in southwest England are closed because of the flooding, including the Totnes Road south of Newton Abbot in Devon, and in Somerset south of Ilchester, the A37 remains shut northbound. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, a very, very good evening to you. It's 7 p.m. on Monday, the 25th of November, and I'm Martin Dordley, in for the big man, Nigel Farage, tonight on Farage. Coming up on tonight's show, our Home Office Minister, Angela Eagle, today confirmed in the House of Commons that a major statistical publication will drop at the end of this week of illegal migrant-related crime. But why have these numbers been withheld until now? I'll be joined in the studio by Reform UK's Rupert Lowe, who spoke up on the issue in Parliament earlier today to discuss this thorny topic. And it's been a bad start to the week for Keir Starmer, as the viral petition demanding a general election has now surpassed over 2.3 million after just a few days. It was only launched, in fact, on Wednesday. But will the online rage have any real-world impact whatsoever? And the Prime Minister dismissed any calls for a general election earlier on today, but he didn't himself push for vehemently for a second Brexit referendum. Yes, he did. Sir Keir Starmer wanted a second roll of the dice when the election result didn't suit him. And also, Donald Trump is sensationally set to remove all transgender people from the US military as soon as his first day back in office, sources have revealed. Is this a political move from the president-elect to keep the right on side, or a necessary step to ensure a strong defence force as global tensions, of course, continue to rise? And Nigel Farage claims the government is trying to fast-track the UK's handover of the Chagos Islands before that man Donald Trump returns to the White House. Well, as Britain's National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell visits Mauritius today, have we witnessed today our territorial surrender to an ally of China? And will Trump step in to stop that move? Before all of that meat-ridden menu, it's time for your news, and here is Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and a very good evening to you from the newsroom. 2 minutes past 7. Well, it's being reported that 2 British tourists have now been rescued and 2 others are still missing after a boat sank off the coast of the Red Sea in Egypt. The Foreign Office says it is supporting several British nationals and their families. That vessel was carrying 31 tourists and 14 crew when it went down near Marsa Alam. The cause of the sinking is unclear at this stage, but authorities had been warning of high waves at the time. Rescue efforts are ongoing and being led by the military and local officials. Tonight, the Environment Secretary has said more flooding is likely this week following the devastation already caused by Storm Bert. The storm, which swept across England and Wales over the weekend, brought torrential rain, flooding and 80-mile-an-hour winds. In Northamptonshire, a major incident's been declared as heavy rainfall caused severe flooding, overwhelming local emergency services with over 800 calls received. Authorities there are urging the public to only dial 999 when there is a risk to life. Well, next to some breaking news coming to us out of Estonia tonight, that 12 British soldiers have been injured in a major crash there, involving, we understand, 2 minibuses that were transporting NATO troops. That crash involved 6 vehicles near the Russian border. The soldiers were serving on NATO's Operation Cabrit and were on their way back from their base in Tapa at the time. An RAF jet was deployed to evacuate them, transferring them to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. Well, just staying with that story for a few moments, we've had a statement into us from the Ministry of Defence, and they say 8 of those most seriously injured in that crash have been airlifted to the UK. 3 remain in hospital, and they are saying that 5 have since been discharged. 3, as I say, being cared for at this stage at the Royal Centre for Defence Medicine at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, adding that they wish all of those involved a speedy recovery. At this stage, though, they are saying they won't be commenting on individual injuries or provide any personal details about those involved. Any more information on that we will, of course, bring to you throughout this evening. Well, turning to some other news coming to us from the United States, that prosecutors there have dropped their criminal case against Donald Trump. Special counsel Jack Smith dropped all 4 felony charges against the president-elect related to his alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Trump, who was, of course, indicted in August 2023, had been facing charges including conspiracy to defraud the US. The case, which was put on hold for months while Trump's legal team contested his prosecution, was a historic moment, the first time a former president was accused of trying to illegally retain power. And here, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has defended her budget, telling business leaders it's brought stability to the economy. Speaking at the CBI conference earlier, she said difficult decisions were needed to draw a line under the inheritance from the previous Tory government. Rachel Reeves also ruled out any further borrowing or tax hikes, saying public services must now live within their means. And she also dismissed calls for big tax rises on businesses, saying the economy is now on a firm footing.
We have now drawn a line under the inheritance that I faced. Public finances are now on a firm footing, and also our public services are funded in a proper way. And we've now set the envelope for those public services for the rest of this Parliament, which means we're not going to have to come back for more.
Well, that's it from the newsroom for now. Joe Casper will be here at 8 o'clock with all the top stories. Now, though, it's back to Westminster.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Now let's get cracking with tonight's show. We'll start with this. The Asylum Minister, Angela Eagle, confirmed today in the House of Commons that a bombshell statistics concerning illegal migration are set to be released by the end of this week. At the Rupert Lowe, MP of Reform UK, raised the matter in Parliament during today's Home Office questions. Let's take a listen.
I've been told by her department in response to a written question that the number of crimes committed by illegal migrants is not available through published statistics. I'm sure that the Home Office does hold the data, so would the Minister today commit to publishing that information in full?
There's a huge statistical drop of immigration-related national statistics coming at the end of this week.
There we go. Now, that is a morsel to dangle. However, questions will remain as to why these figures have taken this long to be published, leading to a wider discussion over government transparency or the lack of it, particularly regarding who is coming in and out of our country and what crimes they are committing or not. So tonight, I'm asking you the big question. Is it time that our government published statistics on crimes by illegal migrants? Tweet #Farage on GB News, or you can email us farage@gbnews.com. Well, I'm joined in the studio now by the man who asked that question earlier on today. That's the Reform UK MP for Great Yarmouth, Rupert Lowe. And I'm also joined by GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Rupert, let's start with you. You've been nibbling away on trying to get crime data published and also benefits data, universal credit. That was last week. Why do you want this data published and what do you think it will tell us?
Well, first of all, Martin, so the viewers understand, as an MP, you can ask 20 questions a day of the government, which we've worked out fairly quickly that we should use. And we're nibbling away trying to effectively ask a question and then ask another question and fill the gaps in and try and get as much of the data as we can. I mean, my view on this is that the British public deserve to have transparent, honest data. You know, good government is transparent government. And ultimately, it's the British taxpayer who's paying the bills. And in my world, that he who pays the piper calls the tune. And I think it's very important that we get honest, accurate data. And interestingly, when Angela Eagle answered that question, she didn't deny that they had the data. But she said there was going to be a big data dump later this week. We think it's Thursday, and I just hope she's not gaslighting everybody and going to dump the ONS data, which comes out quarterly anyway. So but we can look at that on Thursday.
Now, Rupert, you have to work this data out yourself in Britain and shade in the blanks and cross-tabulate. I did some work on the number of UK prisoners by nationality, and it revealed that Albanians are 14.5 times more likely to be in jail than Brits. The Kosovans and Vietnamese, 9 times more likely. Algerians 8 times, Jamaicans 7 times. And we've also seen in other countries, such as Denmark, which has full transparency, that the Kuwaitis are 9 times more likely to commit crimes, be in prison, and violent crimes are 2.5 times more likely to be committed by immigrants as opposed to the indigenous population, Danish-born. But that's for the population as a whole. You specifically want illegal immigrants.
Well, this question was specifically about crimes committed by illegal migrants, which, you know, everybody says they're asylum seekers. In my opinion, they're not. They're economic migrants. So what we need to do, and a lot of these guys are fighting-age young men arriving on the boats, throwing their passports into the sea. Often they're lying about their age, which in itself brings questions about, you know, schools they go to and sort of threats to the decent tax-paying Brits. So I think what we want is, I mean, we're a very decent nation, Martin. We've had a long history of, if you like, trying to do the right thing, and I think we continue to do that. But I do think it's so important that if the foundations of our society are to be protected, we must get accurate data on this. I mean, you know, I'm on record on Twitter as saying, you know, 10,500 foreign criminals in our prisons. We're releasing our own prisoners early in order to keep them there. Personally, I would just deport them. If people come here and they commit crime and they go to prison, they should be sent home. And the worrying thing is, in answer to some of our questions, we're finding out that those are regular, repeat offenders, as you quite rightly say. And you then get whistleblowers coming forward, which we're getting now, you know, who work very often in the public sector, and they are giving us the most unbelievable detail, which form the basis of the questions we ask, you know, about perpetrators of crime who are repeat perpetrators, whose fines are then paid out of the benefits that they get. Now, I mean, we want honest data, Martin, and then people can make their minds up. That's what a healthy society should do.
OK, let's bring in Nigel Nelson now. Where can be the opposition to transparency so we're able to make informed decisions about the types of people in the country and the types of crimes they commit? For example, 1 in 50 Albanians is in a British nick, 14.5 times more likely. Surely a sensible country might use that data, not only as a way of deporting, but also a way of perhaps having a sensible immigration policy in the first place.
Yeah, I'm not against the transparency at all. I mean, if you rent a house or you go for a job, we all have to declare our immigration status to go and do that. So that's fine. What we don't know is whether or not these figures are actually collected. If you listen to Angela Eagle very carefully, she doesn't actually say she's going to give Rupert the figures that he's after. She just says there's a big stats drop coming later on this week.
Yeah.
If we did collect the data, yeah, I think it could be useful. I mean, there was data in the 1990s that, looking at economic migrants into Britain, it showed they committed very little crime. There have been studies in America whereby...
But that differs massively by nationality. For example, in terms of tax receipts, benefits, the whole shebang, Americans, Maltese,
Sure. I mean, you've mentioned Albanians.
Hugely, but if we get down to the granular detail of the nationalities, perhaps who are more prevalent to be criminals and pay the less tax, have the most social housing, claim the most benefits, trends emerge. And what Rupert is saying, what many people who watch this show say, just show us the data.
Yeah, as I say, I'm not against the data coming out. I mean, you mentioned Albanians, that we know that Albanians, a number of them came over here deliberately to commit crime. That's why so many are actually in prison at the moment. We've solved that problem. We've solved it by doing a deal with Albania where we get returns.
Well, Albanians are still the most prevalent foreign nationals in British jails.
They may well be.
We might have solved the problem, but we're still paying for them to be here.
Well, because they're in jail. I mean, what will happen is at the end of their sentence, they'll be sent home because we have an agreement with Albania to return them. And as a result of that agreement, the number of Albanians crossing the Channel has gone down by 90%.
Rupert, are you expecting to get what you want here? Or do you actually believe, as many do, that there is a culture of control and secrecy about what the data we're allowed to digest?
Well, the answer to that question, Martin, is as I go along, I'm hoping that it's not being withheld from us. And there is certainly a degree of, if you like, a lack of coordination within government. But if you notice Angela Eagle, and I agree, she didn't say that she was going to give us new data, but if she's gaslighting us, when we get that data, we're going to be able to call her out. And equally, she didn't deny they had the data. I said in my question, because I think they have got the data, I think they do collect the data, and I think they don't want to release this data.
If they actually claim they haven't got the data, why are they not collecting the data? It seems an absolutely basic thing to collect the immigration status, the nationality of anybody in a prison, anybody who applies for benefits. Why would they not collect the data?
Well, I think they do collect it because from the questions we're asking, and this is what I was saying, it's like a jigsaw trying to fit it together. Some of the answers we get to some questions indicate they are collecting, which is why I made the comment I did in my question. So I think they have got it. But I think as they look at the answers to some of these questions, they're beginning to say to themselves, well, hang on a second, maybe we should be looking at this. I'm sort of hoping that my questions might prompt that. But you know what? This week I had a meeting with Daniel Zeichner. He looked me in the eye and he said he thought that the public sector was more efficient than the private sector, at which point I thought I'm probably trying to push water uphill. But, I honestly, some of these front bench ministers, I think of 26 of them, 3 of them have got questionable business experience. And you could argue it's the blind leading the blind. But, and you had Rachel Reeves in your studio or doing an interview recently. I mean, what the damage she's going to do to the British economy is just to the private sector, not the public sector, is going to be catastrophic. And the public sector is a function of the private sector.
And, Nigel, do you have any fears about how any of this data could be used? A lot of critics on the continent, in Sweden, in Denmark. Data was published last week by the German Treasury, an astonishing set of data, showing that 63% of all benefits claimants are of foreign origin. That means they're either born abroad or they're children of those born abroad. Germany is going transparent. Denmark is going transparent. Sweden is going transparent. We're not. But could that data be used for nefarious reasons? Might entire communities be targeted? For example, everyone thinks, well, all Albanians are bad eggs, all Kosovans are bad eggs. Do you have a fear the data could be used badly?
There's always that danger, and it rather depends what it shows. I mean, my suspicion is that if this data is collected, and I do say it's a big if, I mean, Rupert reckons the Home Office do it. I've seen no evidence they actually do collect this data, but we'll find out towards the end of the week. But what it might show is if you're an asylum seeker, the one thing you want to do is stay in this country. The likelihood you'll commit a crime, and that will completely stop your asylum application is pretty unlikely. So it may not show what Rupert wants it to show.
We can't deport Afghans, we can't deport Syrians, we can't deport Iraqis or Iranians if we wanted to, because they would be sent back to a hostile regime.
But that's right.
They know they can play the game.
Well, I mean, I'm sure some people do that, but you're absolutely right. There are certain people you can't send back to certain countries, Afghans being an example, nor should we. We don't want to actually send people back to a place where they're going to get executed.
Germany is doing that. Liberal, open Germany is returning Afghan criminals to the Taliban. Their reckoning is, if you're going to commit crime, that's your bad choice. Off you go, son. The Germans are doing it.
OK, doesn't mean we should.
OK, we'll leave it there. Nigel Nelson and Rupert Lowe, excellent start to the show. And, of course, all eyes on Thursday for when that data drops. Thank you very much, Rupert, for joining us in the studio. Now, bad start to the week for Keir Starmer, some might say, as the viral petition demanding a general election surpasses, as you can see, that live ticker, 2.385 million after just a few days. Only came out, in fact, on Wednesday. But will the online rage have any real-world impact whatsoever?
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The latest Channel 4 Dispatches documentary has revealed details about the royal family's finances, including reports that private royal estates have received millions of pounds of income from public bodies and charities.
Morning, and good morning, Stephen. Absolutely, I'm not shocked either. And also, as a former butler, I was also a duchy rentee. I used to rent one of the properties, and we were always aware of the property portfolio. I don't think it's kind of a bit news thing. Obviously, part of the, if you like, the business side is these two duchies, Cornwall and Lancaster, and the late Queen obviously was the Duke as well of Lancaster, and now you've got the Prince was obviously, or the King, when he was Prince, had the duchy. And these properties, portfolios as well, I mean, obviously they make money. I mean, but they've been around for, I think they go back to George III, if not before.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel. Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney. Now, before the break, we asked, is it time the government published stats on crimes by illegal migrants? And Sue says this: of course, the numbers of migrant crimes should be published. The public have a right to know this information and how many migrants are being held in our prisons, and also the cost. Roberts adds this: it's an outrage that data on immigrant crime has to be begged for. The people have a right to know all of the data, and government decisions must be seen to be responsive to this data. I have no confidence that this shambolic government will be honest. And Linda says this: data will be welcome, but only if they are accurate and not massaged. Now, a petition calling for a general election has passed 2 million signatures. In fact, it's nudging 2.4 million. And the campaign, started by the publican Michael Westwood on Wednesday, has been signed by those who believe the current Labour government have gone back on their promises. And this morning, Keir Starmer ruled out calling another general election, but said he was not surprised some people want a rerun. Let's take a listen.
Look, I remind myself that very many people didn't vote Labour at the last election.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that many of them want a rerun. That isn't how our system works. There would be plenty of people who didn't want us in the first place. So, look, what I focus on is the decisions that I have to make.
Isn't it funny how, you don't get a second chance? That's not how we do things in Britain. Well, it's quite something, isn't it? Coming from the man who spent 3 years calling for a rerun of the Brexit referendum, the largest democratic exercise this country has ever seen. And look, on screen there, thanks to all those who signed the petition, we need urgent action to take refugees and review of the ineffective asylum rules. See, clearly, he hasn't always taken such issues with petitions. And there we go. He wanted that, more support for asylum seekers. Is this a case of the Prime Minister liking petitions when they suit his agenda and clearly changing his mind when they don't? Well, panel, what say you? I'm joined now by my panel, the former spokesman for Reform UK, Gawain Towler, and GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Gawain, let's start with you. I understand you've waded through 5 hours of Storm-Burt floods
to get
back here to argue with Nigel Nelson.
Just to get in.
I'll let you go first. Is it time for a second election based on this? Or actually, are there the kind of silly games that the Brexiteers accused Remainers of playing for all those years?
I feel a little bit dirty, but I think I agree with Keir. I think the example you gave of what he supported was not a constitutional issue. It was a policy issue.
Yeah.
Just like the 6 million who signed the petition to have another referendum, we'd had that referendum. We've just had a general election. Oh, I see no problem with people signing a petition, but they're not going to get a new general election. However, I would think about it. If 10% of that 2 million odd joined Reform, and paid their 25 quid, or joined the Greens, can you imagine the impact that would have? 200,000 people joining a political party. Now that would have massive implications for the country's democracy and politics in this country. But this, I think, in a country... And it really, really worries me, actually. It's losers' consent is vital for the decent running of our government. Whether I like it or not, Keir Starmer is my Prime Minister. And this is an Americanisation, a divisiveness. Not accepting the result is a really bad look for community cohesion, the nation as a whole. So I think, much as I hate it, Keir's right.
How painful was that to say?
Very.
Nigel Nelson, on to you.
I agree with Gawain.
Oh, no.
You're not meant to agree. You're not paid to agree with each other. Let's start falling out on a serious point.
OK.
When you drill into who's dissatisfied, guess what? It's about 6% of the electorate and around about 20 seats are unhappy. Guess who the MPs are? Rishi Sunak, Nigel Farage, Robert Jenrick, Victoria Atkins. Is this just a case of those who lost the election not being at all happy about it, just like Sir Keir Starmer was? But isn't that the point? It was good enough for the Prime Minister to demand a second bite of the cherry back in 2016. Now he's saying no way, Jose.
Yeah, well, first of all, I didn't agree with the idea of a second referendum. I was a fervent Remainer, but I thought the decision had been made. My side lost. That was the end of it. On this one, no, there shouldn't be another general election. It would be ridiculous. This petition will go nowhere. My own feeling is it's just one big practical joke. It's something that the British public...
That's the government, actually.
The British public actually enjoy doing that because, I mean, at things like the national census in 2001, 370,000 people said they were Jedis. If they really were, it meant they outnumbered Sikhs and Jews in this country. In fact, it was a joke that when they were asked to name a polar exploration ship, Boaty McBoatface came up. This is another example of a practical joke. A lot of the people who are actually signing this petition are coming from China, Russia, Iraq,
it's always
Iran,
the Russians.
and even the Antarctic. So the penguins are getting in on the act.
On a serious point, I know you're making mischief, Nigel, but our inbox today has a lot of gravitas behind it, that people do feel genuinely that it's not about a referendum, an election for election's sake. It's about the fact that key things like the winter fuel allowance, the farmers' inheritance tax rate weren't mentioned in the manifesto.
I think
that's why they're this chuffed.
It is a legitimate expression of people's disgust with how the government has prosecuted its role as government since the election. It's overturned its own manifesto commitments to farmers.
No, it hasn't.
No national insurance on workers. Oh, let's give it a rest.
I've got to say, at no point did they say in the manifesto they weren't going to raise employer national insurance, that what wasn't going to be raised
they thought
was the amount on people's pay slips.
No, I'm sorry. The fact is, it is a tax on workers, whether we like it or not. And to claim that it wasn't was rubbish.
all taxes have a knock-on effect, and I take that point.
But when they were caught...
But there was no direct taxation on working people.
When Rachel Reeves was caught, when the government were caught, they went, oh, but look at the clever way we put it on a manifesto. You didn't spot it, did you?
Well, they did, you see.
The
Treasury Secretary, Laura Trott, did spot it. She said, hang on a sec, I think some were buried in here.
And when the NFU were told that there would be no changes to our inheritance tax, when they were told there'd be no changes to that, that was a betrayal of... Well, it was the first time a Labour leader had been to the NFU for years, and he told them a porky.
That's more like it. That's why I wanted you two in, to have a little kick-off like that now. A quick reminder, here is that clip of a certain Sir Keir Starmer wanting a change of policy in previous life. Let's have a look.
Already voted, I think, 3 times as a party for a second referendum with a 3-line whip behind it. And so I can tell you today, an incoming Labour government will legislate for a referendum immediately on taking power and hold that referendum within 6 months. Labour must support all options remaining on the table, including campaigning for a public vote. That was our commitment. We would call for a general election if the deal didn't get through, but that if that didn't happen, the option of a public vote ought to be available.
There's always a tweet, there's always a video, and there are so many U-turns. Nigel Nelson, there's the man himself, saying that's not how we do things in Britain, repeatedly and provably demanding a second roll of the dice when he doesn't get the result he wants. The guy's a hypocrite.
As I said, I was never in favour of a second referendum. I think it was a mistake at the time to call for one. In fairness, since he became leader of the Labour Party, he has not repeated that. He accepts the result of the Brexit referendum, as the rest of us should.
And as I say, it sticks in my craw, but on this one, he's right.
But what about the cause of blatant hypocrisy there?
Yeah,
there was repeatedly, over and over again, we have a second roll of the dice, and now, no thanks.
I disagree with Nigel on the fact that he suggests it's all a big wind-up. No, these are real people. The vast majority of the people signing up to this petition are real people with real grievances.
But the petition goes nowhere.
I agree with you.
We know that
I agree with you,
but
it's not
debated.
a joke.
It may get debated.
It's not Votey McVoteface.
But there's no way this petition is going to result in anything whatsoever.
I agree.
It might be a chance for the opposition parties to have a good whinge in Westminster Hall. That's all that's going to happen.
But the whole point is that I think this is one of these things that allows people to vent their frustration. It isn't a joke.
Which they're entitled to do.
And that's fine. Yeah. It's not going to get another general election, nor should it. That's not how we do things here, and I quite agree. But I think, and it's not just Tories and Reform of the 5-6% now. There's quite a few Labour MPs up north who have found themselves in that situation. The Darlingtons, Stockton and things of this sort. Some of the Red Wall ones, they're starting to tip over there. But that, again, is not the point. The point is, in our system, with losers' consent, with the presumption of goodwill, things of this sort, which are absolutely vital to our cohesion as a country, then we have to accept that.
There you go. I agree with Wade again.
Stop agreeing. It's far more fun when you disagree. And I love that Votey McVoteface, the line of the night. Gentlemen, time. Superb. Now, coming up next, Donald Trump is set to remove all transgender people from the US military as soon as his first day back in office. Sources have revealed to us at GB News. Is this a political or is it a pragmatic move? That's next.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After a blustery day, we are going to see winds ease into this evening, leaving a mix of clear spells and showers tonight, and it is going to be turning rather chilly under those clearer skies too. Storm Bert, currently sat to the northeast of the UK, will eventually move its way over to Scandinavia. It does leave behind some blustery winds and some outbreaks of rain for a time, though these will eventually ease away overnight. Still plenty of blustery showers though moving through, particularly around western coasts, and these may linger on for a time, bringing longer spells of rain at times too, particularly across parts of the south. Further inland across central and southeastern areas, we're likely to see plenty of clearer skies, so a risk of frost, perhaps even some fog patches by the time we reach tomorrow morning. So through around Scotland, we are still going to continue to see plenty of showers, mainly around coasts, though a few feeding inland at times too. Under clearer skies, though, it is going to be feeling chilly with a risk of frost. Still plenty of showers around coasts of Northern Ireland, northwest England too. Drier and clearer further east, and generally across parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a much clearer start to the day. Once again, a risk of frost, perhaps even some fog patches by the time we reach the morning. But overall on Tuesday, it is set to be a much brighter brighter day. Still can't rule out some showers, mainly around northwestern coasts, perhaps just feeding inland and across northern parts of England at times. But overall, a brighter day, plenty of sunshine, and with much lighter winds, it's likely to feel much more pleasant compared to this afternoon. That's away from northeastern coast of Scotland, though. Still some blustery winds here and still plenty of showers moving through. Now, heading into Wednesday, we'll see a bit of a split in the weather. Outbreaks of rain across the south, some blustery winds. This rain could linger for a time across central and parts of southeast England. But to the north of this, plenty of clear skies, plenty of sunny spells, still just a few showers around coastal areas. And to finish off the week, likely to see some foggy and frosty mornings, but still plenty of sunshine by day. Bye for now.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney, covering for the big man. Now, Donald Trump is sensationally set to remove all transgender people from the US military, according to sources close to the president-elect. And an executive order could come as soon as his first day in office, dismissing thousands of service personnel on medical grounds, as Mr. Trump continues to rally against what he calls woke practices in the military. He says some high-ranking officers are more interested in diversity and inclusion rather than fighting. But some have criticised the proposal as US armed forces continue to fail to meet their recruitment targets. Now, the question is this a necessary step to keep America's military strong as world tensions heat up? Or is it just a gratuitous political move? That's the question I'm going to put right now to the US Defence and Foreign Affairs analyst Lee Cohen. Lee, welcome to Farage. So day one, we're expecting a lot of drama, big fireworks straight out of the box, and this is a truly eye-catching concept to expel all transgender military staff on day one, potentially. Can you tell me, what do you think is driving this?
Well, thank you for having me, Martin. This is a necessary and pragmatic initiative by the Trump administration, to be, because the military must refocus on its primary mission, which is preparing for and winning wars, not on the accommodation of social issues that do not contribute to operational success. While individual freedoms are important in American society and in all free societies, it's essential that military priorities emphasize unity, combat readiness, and cohesion above identity politics that could jeopardize these objectives.
And Lee Cohen, I've seen some astonishing figures about the amount of money that transgender soldiers cost the US military, as high as $15 million, I've read, in 5 years. And that's around about 1,900 trans troops, right, in the US military. $11.5 million on psychotherapy, $3.1 million on transgender surgery. Of course, all picked up by the taxpayer. So is there a financial reason behind this too, would you say?
Well, Martin, the military invests hundreds of thousands of dollars in each soldier's training, but transgender personnel and others requiring extensive medical accommodations may become actually medically ineligible, undermining their deployability. Soldiers requiring special medical treatment, surgeries, or extended time off to address gender-related issues may disrupt unit cohesion, create logistical challenges, and reduce overall readiness.
Is there any evidence that actually having transgender troops in a regiment might cause danger or safety issues? For example, there's some controversial data out there, Lee Cohen, about men putting themselves in greater danger. For example, if a female soldier is shot or injured, they go back into a more dangerous situation to try and retrieve, recover and assist to a point where they could endanger life. Is there any evidence of that? Or is Donald Trump on a sort of ideological warfare here to try and stamp out woke culture?
No, I don't think so, because of the nature of war fighting. Issues like transgender bathrooms and extensive gender accommodations really undermine unit cohesion and distract from mission-critical focus. And I can guarantee you, Martin, that our adversaries are not focused on identity politics. Our enemies, particularly those in China, Russia, and elsewhere, are not bogged down by identity politics. They are focused on power, strategy, and dominance. And the military is a tool of national defense. And the key to winning wars lies in focus on strategy, operational readiness, and unity, not on divisive cultural issues.
I think you got a great point there. I can't imagine Kim Jong-un or Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping caring too much about the pride flags. Can I quickly ask you one quick question? You would imagine that the trans community, the legal community in America will not take this lying down. Could there be the mother of all lawsuits if this comes through?
Well, I imagine, they are... The left are smarting, as you know, and they're looking for anything and everything to get involved in their pushback against Donald Trump. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them pushing back hard on this.
I think you're exactly right. I think there will be legal warfare around this. Thanks for joining us. That's the US Defence and Foreign Affairs analyst Lee Cohen. Thank you very much for joining us on Farage. I'm joined back in the studio by my panel, the former spokesperson for Reform UK, Gawain Towler, and GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, let me start this time with you. Is this a war that Donald Trump is specifically and deliberately choosing to stamp out woke culture? And in your opinion, is he choosing the wrong target?
Yes, he is. This is taking America back to the Dark Ages. I mean, let's see if he carries it out. He says he'll do all sorts of things, and often he doesn't actually do them. But he did ban transgender personnel from the armed forces when he was last president, although anybody who was transgender was allowed to stay in. The idea of actually sacking what could be as many as 15,000 people, when America's going through a recruitment crisis, they're looking for 40,000 recruits, could actually be an absolute disaster for the American military. We've had transgender personnel serving in our armed forces in 2014. What the top generals say is that it's been fine, there's been absolutely no problem. They have to go through the same mental and physical entry criteria as anybody else, and they've served perfectly happily and done their job for our military. So what Trump is doing, yes, it is purely an ideological thing. There's no practical point behind it.
Go in.
I do think some of the points made by Mr. Cohen were valid about combat cohesion. The military is different from society. It is not the same. I remember I was a territorial soldier, and when I was at Sandhurst, there was a fellow standing next to me in the parade ground, and the sergeant barked at him, and he almost questioned the order. And the sergeant turned to him and said, "Sir, we are here to defend democracy, not practice it. Now do what you're damn well told, sir." And there is a point in that. The army is not society. The army is an armed bit of society. It runs by different rules. It has different systems. And whilst I do think this is part of his, right, I'm going to launch a war on woke America, yes, I do think that. And I don't think he banned them before. He just didn't allow them in. So,
that's right. Yes,
he didn't throw them out. To suggest they're going back to the Dark Ages, they're going back to 2019.
Well, no, they're not. He's going much further this time by actually throwing people out, throwing people out of a job.
Dark Ages. I'm sorry. Transgenderism as a thing has only really been there since Jan Morris.
And it's worth pointing out, gentlemen, that 59% of the American electorate support this. So maybe the whole electorate is going back to the Dark Ages.
Which is more than he got.
Or maybe, actually, this is just a return to common sense. Gentlemen, we'll leave it there for now. Now, for tonight's What the Farage, critics are voicing outrage over a new children's book by Usborne that they say pushes political indoctrination in schools. The book Lift the Flap, questions and answers about refugees, is aimed at school children as young as 7. It tells kids that refugees enrich our country and claims we all have roots in other countries. Now, accompanying teaching materials encourage children to write to their MPs to advocate for more refugees and to urge parents to discuss the multicultural foods and economic growth that refugees supposedly bring. Now, the book, created with taxpayer-funded Refugee Council money, has been sent around schools and libraries nationwide. Now, one page highlights the dangers of small boat crossings, while another proclaims refugees welcome, with slogans like bridges, not borders. The question is it education or is it indoctrination? Now, up next, as Britain's National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell visits Mauritius today to discuss the Chagos Islands, have we witnessed today our territorial surrender to an ally of China? That's next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recruiters are warning that if you're not tech savvy, you could be missing out with your CV failing to make it through an AI-powered sifting process. So we've gone from sort of computer says no HR people ticking boxes to AI, right? Is that right?
Yes, well, this applies once you're in the job as well, as a recent report revealed that employees expect AI will manage an average of 1/3 of their tasks within the next 12 months. Well, joining us now to discuss this is Cosmo Curry, founder of Van Kuysen, a leading company in technology recruitment.
Morning, Cosmo.
Morning.
Good
Hi,
morning.
Van.
Well, yeah,
Hi,
thank you for joining us. It's very interesting, isn't it? Because AI is, of course, on the rise and now in the workplace and in universities and things. Another article came to mind. There was a student recently, I think it was in the news just the other day, that got in trouble for using AI. So there's, you know, for exam purposes and essays. So there's lots of different ways that it can be a good thing and a bad thing. But you're, of course, here to talk about the ways in which AI is a good thing within the workplace.
Absolutely. I mean, AI is here to stay, for sure. And we're seeing this rise of people using it in such a clever format. And the other side of it is also we're seeing people who are using it and during the process of that, they are losing their character. We're losing the actual insight into the individual behind that. And so we've kind of got this kind of mix. And I think AI is phenomenal when you're looking at it from a point of view of optimization, point of view of speed, getting results. But I think we have to remember that, you know, the fundamental of recruitment is people. And we cannot substitute the people, the personal aspect, by replacing that with AI.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Make the book.
Not in the book, there.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Daubney. Now, President-elect Donald Trump's team are frantically seeking assurances that the deal to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius will not be completed before his inauguration in January. And this comes as the UK's new National Security Advisor, Jonathan Powell, has today travelled to Mauritius, attempting to rush through the agreement, which includes the future of a joint UK-US base on the island. Now, is this another example of the Labour government undermining Britain's special relationship with the US? Now we just witnessed the UK surrendering our own territory. Well, I'm joined in the studio still by my panel, the former spokesman for Reform UK, Gawain Taylor, and GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and hoving interview next to me, like a vision, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. I'd like to get your take on this. But first, let's start with you, Gawain Taylor. Is this a dramatic surrender of sovereign territory soon, quickly, rush through before Donald Trump can stop it?
I find it absolutely astonishing. You've got the only of the three parties to this deal, only Starmer remains from the beginning of this deal, because Biden's on his way out, and within a week of this deal being announced, I think, a couple of weeks later, every single MP in the government, the then government of Mauritius, lost their seat. So it's a completely new thing. But I mean, the fact is that Jonathan Powell spent a career hauling down Union Jacks around wherever he can get them, and I think that it is outrageous. But I think that no matter how... One of the biggest problems we've got, I think, with Trump's team, definitely, security, China, all that stuff. But one of the major problems we've got now is if the government does recoil and does see sense, they're going to have to give credit to one Nigel Farage, who's basically been leading the charge in the House. And the very idea that this government can allow itself to give that credit, because he has been pushing so hard, he has been speaking to America, and been leading this in many ways. I think is there statesmanship in the Foreign Office? Is there statesmanship in number 10? Because there needs to be.
Nigel Nelson, but a lot of Brexiteers would say, you know, this is foreign interference in British politics, in the same way they moaned like Billy-O about Barack Obama saying we'd be at the back of the queue if we Brexited, and yet Donald Trump now is wading in. Is this Brexiteers moaning about foreign interference in the same way Remainers did?
No, but we're not a Trump colony either. I mean, what we are is a sovereign nation, and there's a timetable for dealing with this, but that's taking away the argument about whether it's the right thing to do. The timetable is the one that we should set. We shouldn't be bound by a timetable set by the way the Americans pause between an election and an inauguration. When it comes to the Chagos Islands, I think we're doing the right thing. We have to make sure that we've got the right guarantees for Diego Garcia.
Do we speak to the Chagosians?
Well, they ought to have a right to go back to their own country.
Well, how about a right to make a decision about their own country?
Well, hang on, they're not there any longer. I mean, thanks to us, because we removed them and then lied to the United Nations about the fact that the islands were
uninhabited. It's got nothing to do with Mauritius. It's 1,700 miles away. It never has had anything to do with Mauritius. We know the Chinese are interested. It is strategically and constitutionally and morally stupid to do what they're doing.
Which is why you need the guarantees around Diego Garcia.
There are no guarantees that are worth... There were guarantees for the island of Victoria in Hong Kong. There were guarantees for the island of Victoria in Hong Kong, which we tore up because we knew we couldn't compete. Hong Kong, not the new territories, Hong Kong was British in perpetuity, and we gave it up despite that 99-year lease and things of this sort. I do not believe that sort of deal with a country that is underpinned by China could ever survive.
The only way that China could move in is militarily, and
no, it can move in diplomatically. It pays the money.
Taken over most of Africa without firing a shot.
They pay the money.
Yeah, but they can't take over a military base.
No, they can't take over Jacob Dash there.
Which is all that matters.
You then park listening stations on the other islands and you're done.
Is to give the islanders some rights about going home. I agree
we should certainly talk to them about that.
Gentlemen, I'd like to bring in Jacob Rees-Mogg. So, Jacob, if I could now, is the UK already swapping the Union flag for the white flag of surrender?
Yes, absolutely. It's a very odd policy, as Gwen's pointed out. The Chagos Islands have no connection to Mauritius. They're not being given back to Mauritius. They never belonged to Mauritius. They were purely administered by the British Empire from Mauritius when Mauritius was a colony. So it's not handing it to somebody who has any right to it. America has a very important interest because it has the Diego Garcia base, which it would want to keep. But it is very odd to pay a country an awful lot of money for 100 years for property that's already ours. The Chinese have lots of interests there, so it's strategically misguided. And it does seem to me odd that Keir Starmer would appoint Jonathan Powell, who was, of course, an advisor to Tony Blair, not famed for the success of his foreign policy, to be the
Good Friday Agreement,
cheese-eating surrender monkey for the UK at this point.
So, Jacob, may I ask you, Nigel Farage made the point that would this set some kind of template that, in actual fact, the UK would be testing the special relationship? Harry says there, look, can they still regard us as an ally if this goes ahead?
Well, it does seem to me that the British government at the moment is doing everything it can to antagonise Donald Trump. So first of all, you've got David Lammy, who thinks he's a Nazi. Then you hand away Chagos Islands. Then you've got Starmer going off to COP and pretending nothing's happened in terms of climate change when Starmer has changed the basic fundamentals of it all. It looks as if the Labour Party's view of the President-to-be of the United States is David Lammy's view, not the grown-up view that they ought to be taking about the leader of our most important ally.
OK, so Jacob, State of the Nation is up next. What's on your menu, sir?
Well, mentioning COP, we're going to be talking about that because it's another occasion where the Labour Party wants to hand away a lot of our money. Now, we're talking about £300 billion a year from the West to go to other nations. That means UK taxpayers. Nobody's admitting quite how much everyone's going to have to pay. What I'm going to say is the Tories should simply say we're going to pull out of the Paris Accords. This is yesterday's news. It's bad. It's too expensive for British taxpayers. We don't want to give lots of money to other nations. We need the money ourselves. We've got a £2 trillion debt that we can't afford before we start to hand billions over to nonsense climate change projects.
That sounds like precisely the kind of policy Donald Trump might come out with on day one.
We should learn from Donald Trump and why he succeeded and how he appeals to his electorate. He appeals to his electorate by saying he won't make them cold and poor. I think the Conservatives should say the same in the UK. I don't want people I seek to represent to be cold and poor.
What do you make quickly, if I could ask you, about Donald Trump's decision to kick transgender people out of the military? Would you advocate something similar in Britain?
I don't have a particularly strong view about it. It depends what you mean by trans. I think if people have had an operation and have gone through a whole process, that is in a different category from if you, which I think is very unlikely, woke up tomorrow morning and said that you were Martina.
So, Jacob, don't rule these things out.
Don't rule these things out. Nigel's on tomorrow, so let's say next Monday.
Well, I have transitioned as Nigel Farage tonight, and indeed, Trump's transition team may be handling this transition of getting trans people out of the US military. What a glorious state of affairs that is. Nigel Nelson, superb. Gawain Towler, excellent as ever. And of course, don't forget, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg is up next with State of the Nation. I'll be back tomorrow, 3 till 6, but now here's your weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After a blustery day, we are going to see winds ease into this evening, leaving a mix of clear spells and showers tonight, and it is going to be turning rather chilly under those clearer skies too. Storm Bert currently